Welcome to A Life in Chapters, the podcast for anyone who loves journaling, books, and building a creative life and business that truly fits. I'm Alison Wood, and this is Chapter 13, Stepping Inside Jane Austen's World. Now, there's something quietly magical about stepping into the places once occupied by the writers we love. You can feel the weight of their words lingering in the air, even if no one else in the room notices. And for me, one of those places is Jane Austen's house in Chawton, Hampshire, a spot that has quietly become one of my favourite places to return to. Whether you're a lifelong fan of Austen's novels or simply someone who enjoys history, English villages, and the feeling of walking in the footsteps of the past, this house offers something special. It's not just about the literary history, although that's certainly part of the appeal. It's about the atmosphere, the sense of place, and the feeling that you've entered somewhere quietly important. We all have certain places that feel bigger than they look. A modest cottage, a tucked-away room, a single desk. These things shouldn't feel monumental, and yet they do, because we know what was created there. Literary houses, I feel, carry a particular kind of gravity. You're not just looking at walls and windows, you're standing in the middle of someone's creative life. That person might be long gone, but their presence is still woven into the fabric of the place. And you don't have to be a Jane Austen superfan to feel it. You could walk into Chawton with only the vaguest memory of Pride and Prejudice from school and still be struck by the stillness, the sense of story that lives there. I can't quite remember the exact year I first visited Chawton. It must be over a decade ago, but I do remember that my first attempt didn't go to plan. We drove to Austen, which is the closest town, but somehow couldn't seem to locate Chawton itself. My navigation skills that day left a lot to be desired. We circled, we guessed, we argued a little about whether we'd missed a turning. Eventually, we admitted defeat. By then, it was too late in the day to try again. But something had shifted. The failed attempt made me more determined. So the following Saturday, we set off early. This time, I was not going to give up. And as luck would have it, everything fell into place. We spotted the signs with no trouble, and soon we were on our way down the small roads that led into the village. As we pulled in, I was already enchanted. Chawton is the kind of village where you can picture horse-drawn carriages rolling past, skirts rustling on grassy paths, conversations carried out under the shade of trees. It has that timeless quality that makes you feel as if you've stepped sideways into another era. Now, no doubt it's a modern village. The road is lined with cars, there are aerials on the roofs, but it still holds that soft, timeless charm. The hedgerows are thick with green, and many of the cottages in the summer have roses spilling over their doorways. There's a stillness here that feels rare these days, as if the outside world hasn't quite hurried in. Now, I love history, books, pretty places, and a good tea room, and in that moment I realised this was going to be the day that ticked all the boxes. From the outside, Jane Austen's house is relatively modest, as you'd expect from a village cottage. But the moment you step inside, it has a depth to it, a homely, lived-in feel that's easy to connect with. The wooden floors have the kind of creak you only get from centuries of footsteps. The doorways are low, the light filters in gently. The air feels calm, like the moment you take a breath and just stand still for a second. And then there's the little writing table placed by the window. This is where Jane revised and created some of the world's most loved novels. It's almost shockingly small. No sprawling desk, no piles of books, no elaborate quill collection, just a table, a chair, and light from the window. It's humbling to stand there and think about the work that was done in that space. Each room in the cottage holds its own character. In the kitchen, you can almost picture the morning bustle, a kettle steaming over the fire, bread cooling on a wooden board. Upstairs, the bedrooms are plain but inviting, with quilts neatly folded on the beds. A small washstand sits in the corner. It's not hard to imagine Jane or her sister Cassandra preparing for the day, perhaps pausing at the window to watch life in the village unfold. Seeing Jane's writing table made me reflect on the way creativity often blooms in small spaces. I think there's a part of us that waits for the perfect conditions before we start. The dream office, the right desk, the big stretches of uninterrupted time. But here was proof that you can create something timeless from a corner of a room. Jane didn't wait for the perfect space, she worked with what she had. It makes me think of my own desk, the one that sometimes doubles as a dumping ground for post, notebooks, and half-empty mugs of tea. It's not grand, but it's enough, and maybe that's the real lesson. Jane Austen's influence isn't just for novelists or lovers of period drama. Her wit, her careful observation, and her ability to find meaning in the small, everyday moments are lessons any creative person can take to heart. She noticed people, she noticed patterns, she noticed how relationships shifted in subtle ways. A glance, a pause, a single word. That kind of attention to detail is what makes any work, whether it's a story, a painting, or even a business idea, feel alive. It reminds us that inspiration often hides in plain sight, in the tiny moments we might otherwise overlook. You don't have to be writing about Regency England to benefit from her approach. You just need to stay curious about the world around you. And it's why, more than 2 centuries later, people still feel at home in her worlds. Human nature hasn't really changed all that much. We still laugh, hope, and long for connection in ways that she would instantly recognise. Stepping out into the garden at Chawton is another treat. It's peaceful, simple, and feels alive with history. I remember sitting on a bench in the sun, listening to the birds, imagining Jane walking here, perhaps thinking about a character arc or a turn of phrase. The garden has been restored to include flowers and herbs that would have been familiar to her. It's not overly manicured, it's just right, enough to invite you to linger. Knowing more about Jane's daily life adds another layer to the visit. Historian Lucy Worsley, who has been an ambassador for the house, wrote a wonderful book called Jane Austen at Home, which gives a deeply personal perspective on Jane's surroundings. There is also a BBC programme presented by Lucy called Jane Austen Behind Closed Doors. Now, this is definitely worth a watch if you can access it on iPlayer or another streaming service. It's one thing to read Emma or Sense and Sensibility. It's another to stand where Jane ate her breakfast, looked out of the window, or pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. And then there's Cassandra's Cup, the little tea room across from the house, named after Jane's sister. From the window you can see the house itself, and there's something comforting about sitting with a pot of tea and a slice of cake, scribbling in a journal, and knowing that just across the way Jane once did something similar, though with a quill and perhaps stronger tea. If you want to see a few pictures, then head to my blog. I'll link it in the show notes, as well as the museum website link as well, so that you can find out more about the house, visiting times, etc. Visiting Jane Austen's house always makes me wonder, who are our own creative ancestors? Who shaped the way we see the world, the way we write, paint, photograph, or build? For you, it might not be a novelist at all. It could be a songwriter, an artist, a teacher, or even a family member whose creativity influenced you. You don't have to travel to Hampshire to have this experience. Literary and creative landmarks are everywhere, around the world. The childhood home of a poet, the park where a songwriter found inspiration, a cafe where an artist sketched the same corner table for years. And if travel isn't possible, virtual tours and online archives can still give you a sense of place. The important thing is to connect with the creative spaces that light something in you. When I think of Jane Austen's house now, and I haven't visited for quite a little while, I picture that little writing table by the window and the garden just outside. I picture sitting in Cassandra's cup with a pot of tea, looking across the road at the house where those stories took shape. And I'm reminded that creativity doesn't need grandeur, it just needs you, your space, however small, and your willingness to show up. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe or leave a review on your favourite podcast platform. It really helps other listeners find the show, and I'd love to share more of these moments with you.